A very warm welcome to all our wonderful listeners to As You Are podcast with myself, Lisa Bullin, and my wonderful podcast partner, Whit Stewart.
Hello. We're happy to be back.
It's really nice to be back. We have had a short break because we run our own podcast and we will do things that fit into our life.
We will do things when the hell we want to.
Exactly. We are in control of our own podcast. Isn't that an incredible feeling?
It's amazing. It is amazing and a luxury. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's something we're practicing more and more in our lives to kind of to bleed into all the areas, which is we get to choose. So I've been in deep hibernation for the past about 2 months, really, realistically, because my body told me it was time to rest because it was the fucking dead of winter. So made a lot of sense.
And wintering is a thing. If you haven't read Catherine May's book, Wintering, I highly recommend it. But it is a thing. It's really important for us to have periods of time where we slow down. And something that we have been discussing off air is we're actually talking about fear in this episode. We're talking about fear and trust, fear and bold moves, and trusting yourself when everything feels uncertain. One of the reasons for this is that both Whit and myself, we have our own business, and I can tell you now that having your own business is terrifying.
It's scary shit all the time.
It's pretty much wake up every day feeling some kind of fear and moving through the fear or making friends with the fear and doing the fucking shit anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to touch on those things, not just about business, but also things that are in our lives, times in our lives where we have looked fear in the eye, given it a great big hug and then moved on or just done a thing that's scary. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
fear is a sneaky beast. She's like, really can be really sneaky because fear can. So if you've spent time thinking about fear, being with fear, getting used to being with fear, which I think, we all have a lot of experience with fear, whether we are aware of it or not. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of it. And I say that fear can be really sneaky because I know fear can come out in ways that we might not recognize it. So perfectionism, busyness, like obsessive busyness, procrastination, the sort of feeling that you're like not ready to do something, that you need more certifications or courses. I'm smiling and that because I've been in all of those states. And there are other ways that fear comes out too, but that often it's really interesting as you start to spend more time with fear. You realize that sometimes you're like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this and I don't have enough time. There's not enough time. And then you're like, actually, I'm just scared shitless. And the thing that I actually want to be doing is over here. And I'm over here like fussing about all these like things that don't matter.
That's so true. And what is incredible is that all of those things have shown up in my life too. And it's bizarre how they can be completely opposite. So you can be stuck completely in freeze and not do anything, or you can just fill up your day or week or year or life with so many things, a to-do list that's never ending, that you feel there's this have to do all of those things. And what I have found to be incredibly, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know what the right word is. Sometimes I lose words. Perimenopausal/menopausal after all, but it's fascinating how you can be in either of those states at any one time, and that actually sometimes just letting go of it all is the best way to then sit with the fear and kind of but realize that it's just it's there in us trying to protect us. It's protecting us from some kind of threat, which of course we build up all of these things to be a threat. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. It's something else that's working its way into our psyche so that we become frozen or too busy or have no time or not giving us time to feel those things that maybe we need to feel to be able to then release it.
And I have to bring up the nervous system because fear is directly linked to a lot of our reactions. So when we are in a state of procrastination or perfectionism or busyness or like feeling like we're not ready, we may be not even able to choose. So our nervous system puts us when it believes that we are unsafe, will put us in a state of like automatic reaction. So we don't get to choose. It's an autonomic reaction that it puts us in for survival. So that can be fight, flight, freeze, like to include fawn. And we don't get to choose those things. So that's where I really believe in, I teach breath coaching. And the reason I do that in my moving forward with clients is that I believe these days more than ever. I don't like to make those like grand sweeping generalizations, but people are really anxious and really afraid about a lot of things. And a lot of us are in survival, more or less, like all the time. And so we're not even able to like choose our reactions as we're trying to move forward in the world. So then if we want to do something in our lives that's new, because also my favorite quote around this is your body will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven every time. It wants to keep you safe, something that's unfamiliar. So maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's, I don't know, meeting new friends. Maybe it's like something that
Trying a new skill. And
trying a new skill.
It could be lots of things.
Your body can literally, and your body literally puts you in a state of survival because it's unknown. So therefore, it could be dangerous. And our body's putting us in that state because it believes that there's like physical danger to our life, but it's obviously not that, but it's just unfamiliar. So you may not be choosing these reactions that you may be stuck in. And I've spent years in many of these states, like years. And so basically I say that all to say like, it's not your fault. If you like are listening to this and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I'm totally like, I'm just like busy all the time and I'm avoiding that thing I want to do. It's like, it's not your fault. And there are things you can do about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are things you can do. So what are the things that are your kind of go-to things with?
Oh yeah, I am really, really into breathing. So that's my go-to. And I do that every day, every single day, no matter what, even just for like 10, 15 minutes. And with nervous system sort of like healing work, a lot of it has to do with just like doing it. It's accumulated over time. So you can build up your nervous system so that it has flexibility, more flexibility, like over time. But it does, it can't just be, it's not like a Band-Aid solution sort of a thing. Meditation's great. Many people like swear by cold showers. There are a whole like plethora of things that are like, the internet's also very into the nervous system, which is great. Like lots of people are talking about it. So that's excellent. So there are, big long lists about what you can do. You can walk on the earth in your bare feet. Nature, always kind of the best medicine to just like drop the fear level, to be like, we are safe. The birds are chirping. Things are green. Or maybe not even green in the winter.
Oh, they're not green here. I can tell you that now. But yeah, it is. It's walking in a forest, even if it's bare, and connecting with. It's interesting because I do have a couple of clients that don't live very close to anywhere where it's green, but they can get in a car and drive and then walk. Or, yeah, it's interesting. Not everybody has that perhaps instant access. I literally walk out my front door and I can turn right or left, and in a few hundred meters, I am near the water or near some kind of forest or natural place. But even it was interesting. I was talking to a client about even just having plants in your house can make a difference to
Yes.
rest, and spending time just being there looking at green can have an influence on how you feel and soothing your nervous system, which, as you said, does give you a more flexible system to be able to deal with fear.
Mhm. And so some of the, like, common things that come up in, like, work and life for people, what do you see, Lisa, in your work and life?
It's really fascinating. I work with a range of different people in different contexts as well, but something that is really deep is fear of judgment, actually, of what is somebody else going to think or say, or yeah, think, say, and make some kind of judgment about me. And I mean, it kind of does make me sad. Um, in many ways, it can be worse maybe now, but I don't know actually, because I do have this incredible group of older women who are aged between 65 and 82 that I have a regular contact with, and they're not connected into the internet like my generation and younger generations, but they still have this incredibly deep kind of fear of being judged, and have made comments over the years that I've known them and have had this group about other people. What will other people say? If I have a glass of wine on a Wednesday at lunchtime in a restaurant where I live, what will people think of me? If I wear this colorful outfit and, walk down the street looking like this, what will people think of me? And it is crippling, because what they're doing then is making decisions about what they're doing, not based on what lights them up, but on how it will be perceived, which of course tends to push you towards a decision that is, not necessarily one that you would choose. You're kind of like, chopping off your options about doing the things that light you up, whatever that is. In saying that, some of them are quite good in this particular group, but I think, yeah, in that sense, fear of judgment can sit really deep. And then how do you move past that fear of judgment, of reminding yourself that you cannot control what anybody else, how they react. You
Mhm.
you can make decisions about how you're feeling and about where you are and the things that light you up. If you're not hurting anybody else, wear those clothes or drink that glass of wine with lunch, or do that thing that other people, because they might not. They might look at you and go, "Wow, they're enjoying themselves. I'm going to do that too." Maybe it can be catching.
Well, and this is really I find this so interesting because I think a lot well, I used to get caught up in being like, okay, so when I had a fear of being judged, which is deeply rooted in my family, it's a whole 'nother story, but, because I grew up in quite a judgmental family. But when I had a fear of being judged, I felt like it was superficial. Like, I would brush it off and be like, "Oh, well, that's just silly," or that I felt like I wasn't confident enough. I wasn't confident enough, so it was my problem, so it was like, "Oh god, I'm being so superficial," or like, "God, I really need to become more confident and just own my own decisions." But then I had this realization, or maybe I heard like, sort of collected over the years, which is like, historically, we needed community to survive. We needed to fit into a community somehow, which might have been, it was we're we lived in larger communities, but you had to fit into that community to survive, to eat and have shelter and to like basic level. So now I think of it in a very different way, which is like when I have a fear of posting something online or and I might not immediately being like, "Oh, what will they think of me?" But I might be like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to post that." So it's the same fear. I just go like, "Ah, but of course I have that fear." Like I just want to it's just my body wanting to survive. I just want to fit into the collective because I want to survive, which is about all the, what our body is trying to do. So I've really over time changed my perspective on it. And I find that really, really to be a helpful reminder.
Yeah, it is that reminding yourself about that we were, I mean, especially as women, we've been for hundreds of years vulnerable, and we have had to, I mean, that here where I live, they had a witch trial in the 1600s, and women were burnt, and other women dobbed them in. It was sort of this, well, I'm going to protect myself by dobbing someone else in, and I mean, it's difficult with the records to know, but when you read it, you're kind of like, are you kidding me? It's like, oh yes, she was out dancing with the devil in the forest, and it's like they didn't need evidence or of the devil, but it was enough that several women um, kind of mentioned that in these records. So yeah, it is keeping ourselves safe in a community and fitting in. I mean, you did those things. So yeah, reminding ourselves that we haven't always been safe. And so there's a reason, perhaps. Religion certainly is one of those things. It is like the collective behavior of how we're supposed to behave. Of course, it can constrict us to an extent where it has historically that it's been terrible for women, but it comes from that place. It comes from that. There's reasons why historically that has been a thing. The other couple of things that I want to talk about is the fear of failure and fear of success, which kind of, some people have this real fear of failure and they tend towards perfectionism, but then there's the fear of success too, which you sort of don't think about. But of course, many people have that. It's like, what if I get too big for my boots? Tall poppy
Mhm.
syndrome is a thing, especially in Australia where I come from. It's like, don't get too big for your boots, you'll be cut down.
Well, and again, it goes back to like even what you were saying about the witches. It's like, well, if I'm like, not fitting in with the collective and being kind of invisible, then I'm like up on a stage potentially, or I'm like, and that makes me much more easily targetable. And I have a personal story in this, which is like, which I think about a lot as I move forward in my own business, which is that in my family, when I was growing up, I still am my mother's favorite. So whether you talk about in families, I know, there are many families that are very balanced and everybody is loved equally. And we were loved equally, but I was the favorite and I still am the favorite. And my sister will outwardly say it. And have always been like, ah, mm, mm." But when we were growing up, I never felt like I didn't, it like confused me because I didn't feel like I in any way deserved that. I was the eldest for my mom. We have half siblings, but for my mom's children, I was the eldest of her two children. So I felt like it wasn't deserved. And then I didn't want to do anything to make myself like I didn't want to succeed because my success equaled me being highlighted more, and it would both make my sister angry at me, so I was afraid of her, like, the wrath of my sister, but I also was really, like, I felt so bad. I felt like I was carrying a lot of, like, pain around that and a lot of, like, just I worried about my sister a lot because it didn't, it wasn't fair. It didn't feel fair. And so a lot of and I carry these things into my adult life, I'm like, don't look at me. Like, I don't deserve to, I'm like, but look at everybody else. If I can't, I'm like, but look at I'm just equal to everyone else. And I believe that I'm equal to anyone else anyway, because I believe people are equal, no matter if they're successful or not.
But you're also allowed to shine. and have the spotlight on you every now and then. Like, that is also
Yeah.
okay
But
thing.
we carry these things from, family situations, not only generationally, what we may be carrying forward in terms of like survival, but also like, how did you grow up? How was success deemed when you were growing up? And a lot of people actually like feel like that's how they get love. So when they succeed, they get love. When they get good grades, when they do really well in business when they're adults. Like, so that may be, there are a lot of complicated things that are attached to success, failure, whatever those things mean as well. Because ultimately, also, what I really believe is that it's all practice. It's like, it's, I would love to approach everything like that, where I'm like, it's just practice. It is well received, not well received. Like, it's just all practice. I just go forward and then I do something else. On my good days, Lisa, I have that nailed. And then I have some other days in there too, because I am a human.
One of the most important things I think for me is that we're aware of these things, that we actually we dive in, we go there, and I mean, my business is called Flourish, and I love the idea that yes, we can all bloom, but you need the shit to bloom. Like, the soil doesn't just support it; it needs the nutrients, and sometimes that's the shit. It's the hard stuff. It's the difficult stuff, and diving into those shadow aspects of ourselves and those things that sit uncomfortably, or the discomfort that we feel, that we're constantly not, and it doesn't have to be every day, but that we're curious, we're questioning, and we're not just sitting in that feeling thinking that there's no way forward and that there's no way out of it. It is, no, I love the no mud, no lotus. Like, we need that hard stuff, that difficult stuff. And the processing of that, and the delving in. And I mean, for me, there's a lot of things that I do to help me through that. There are certain questions that I ask myself to kind of look at the darker, sort of shadowy, I don't know, I don't even necessarily like that sometimes, but the stuff that's a little bit buried that we're not, conscious of, that we're bringing that up a little bit, so that we are actually more aware of what is driving our decisions and why is this feeling like this in my body right now, and that we're questioning those things. And perhaps it is breath work that you do, or it might be a visualization. I find those very useful. There's a whole range of tools, but it's that transformational process where you're moving through that you're not, the decisions that you're making aren't because you're going on to a million what if scenarios and at the end you're dead at all of them. It's like, it's about also living. It's living through that, and it's experiencing those things, so that, I mean, there are many, many, many moments of joy. And so I think the bringing up of all of that stuff, that dark stuff, or whether you want to have that in your head, or the image of, like, turning the soil with the shit so that you can bloom from it. That maybe that works better. But I for me, that's so important, that we're not. There's so many things in my life that I have done that are scary, and people have said, "How the hell did you do that?" And I mean, it can be from that I left my marriage, and I left my family, and I left my home country and my home language and culture and everything that I knew, my career, and I moved 15,000 kilometers to Finland. It might seem incredibly deranged for some people, but it was scary. It was difficult, and it's taken a long time for me to. There are still aspects of fear, but less. And I did it anyway. I felt that fear, and I did it anyway. It was
Well, and that's super interesting because there's also in my own experience of moving around a lot, I think for me, often it was a stress response to move away from something that I was more scared of. And then I was in adrenaline. My body took over, and I was in so much. I mean, when I moved to the UK, I moved very far away from one of my children. And I think I was in such a state of like stress response that there are large parts of that that I don't even remember. And it wasn't until my body finally calmed down, helping myself to do so, where I actually dealt with and faced the emotions around it. So it's super, I mean, again, like fear's super interesting because a lot of it is autonomic.
Yeah, and then you have the adrenaline. I was just thinking about, I mean, I have quite a number of friends who've been in adrenal fatigue, and it is that constant fear-related stuff, and it is a lot of things that are out of their control. They're making decisions to keep themselves and their children safe, and it's just a continual, and I recognize that in myself. There were things that happened in my life where it was one thing after the other. And I thought, if I keep going like this, I will get sick. I could feel it, but it's also difficult when you're in the thing, when you're in that situation that is triggering that extreme adrenal response, and that it continues, that there isn't, I mean, at some point it does need to stop, and sometimes it is because your body just breaks down. But I was very close to that, actually,
Mhm.
and have been at times in my life, and it and it, most of those things, wasn't fear for me. It was family. It was, having a child that was quite ill, and there were a lot of decisions around that I made, and a lot of things that were out of my control that, trigger that fear of what if, and worst case scenario kind of stuff. But I didn't really have the tools that I have now. It was over 10 years ago, and I've learned a lot of tools. I've got them in my toolkit now that I can draw on, that I didn't have before. So for me, it's about starting with these things that help us before you get to that point. It's often not how it works, but the things that we're practicing, um, all of those things, I mean, there are so many things that we have access to, tools that we have access to, whether it's breathwork or meditation or visualization or yoga or um, even Pilates is useful for at least getting you in touch with your body, whether it's cold water swimming, any of those things, journaling, all of those things, or any of those things that that we're using them. It doesn't have to be every day, but that we're practicing them so that they're there. We have them accessible to us when that fear kicks in, or
Mhm.
that situation arises, that we're able to not reach peak annus horribilis.
Yeah, well, and it's really interesting because I think a lot of people end up in sort of like healing, coaching, like therapy, become therapists, like, but in sort of like healing modalities because
Yeah.
they reached breaking points in their lives. And I certainly got there that way. And I know that you've told me you got there that way. And it was because I didn't have the tools then to have this accumulation of like a body that's supported, like, my own like mental state that's supported, like, just like my sort of like wholeness that I now have cultivated. So when things do arise, I am much like I'm much hardier, Lisa.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got there because I was desperate because I basically like just like reached breaking point. And and so it's much easier to look back on it now and go like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I could have done that, and I could have done that, and I could have done that," but I
But you
didn't.
didn't have the tools,
I
yeah,
didn't have the tools.
and it's also a little bit with fear too, is accepting and loving. It's that loving kindness, and even though you're scared, that you connecting with your heart. For me, it comes back to love and loving yourself. And look, I know the journey to loving yourself. It is a rocky road. because there was a long time I didn't love myself. That is for another episode.
Mhm.
We'll be talking about that. But just, yeah, it is small things. It's interesting, that idea of daily acts of courage, building trust in yourself through small things that you can do in the day.
Mhm. And yes, and those daily acts of courage might be forced upon you.
Mm.
Like, that's kind of what we are just saying is like,
Yeah.
you might just need to recognize that you are really courageous. Like, we are all really courageous. Anyone who's here breathing is really courageous, like, period. And that you might not believe that, or you might not see that, but even just to like live on a daily basis, and try your best every day is really courageous. And then you might be in a state too where, you might be in a survival state and not being able to recognize your own courage. And you might be in another state. Like, I'm so grateful to be in a state where like I can take these actions daily that are scary, but they're not like, I'm not in response to things in my life. I'm not in survival mode. I'm getting to take these extraneous, like, scary steps. And I get to, I'm at a place where like I am blessed to be able to like be curious about that. I get to like do that in my life. And that is like incredible. And part of that has been a long journey of getting to a place where I love myself, which was never the case for so long, was not the case. And because of that, I'm not so judgmental. I can be. Like
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, Lisa, I was messaging you and I was like, not in a cultivated place of self-love. So it's not like
It is, and it's not once you're there that it never drops down again.
oh,
That's not how it works. But you
absolutely.
do bounce back.
But
And
you
you,
bounce back so much quicker once you've built up. Again, you build up this accumulation. But I've gotten to a place where like, because the self-judgment isn't there, and I know what's happening in my body. So like if I'm in a state of procrastination or perfectionism, and one of those things, I'm like, okay, I'm having a response, like a fear response. Okay, like not my fault. Not my fault. My body's trying to keep me safe. That's fucking awesome. That's great. I got like a team here working together, and there are things I can do about it. So if the judgment's not there, then I can get curious. But it takes practice. And if the judgment's there, that's okay too. Like, it's about the beginning point is like noticing that, being able to notice it, step back from it and notice it.
and know that that is not final. It's not final. That
No,
feeling. Yeah.
no.
So let's leave on a reflection note. What is one bold move you can take this week, even if you feel fear? We would love to hear what that might look like or feel like or is in your life. So I would like to thank you.
I have to say one more thing before we leave this.
Absolutely.
I think there is also a belief that courage, you're either born with courage or and confidence, or like certain people are confident, or that it's something that has to be learned. But again, it's something that's like an accumulation. You get confidence and courage by taking action, like by doing the scary things. That's how confidence is actually built. Like, you don't need another course.
And it can look different to all of us. It might be
All of that. And
stepping
you can be
outside your
scared
door.
shitless and be doing the scary things. And yeah, that's kind of a lot of life, right?
It is, right? Yeah. Thank you again for a wonderful discussion. It's nice to be back. And we look forward to our next episode, which will be a little bit about love. So thank you for joining us on As You Are podcast with Lisa and Whit.